Hi there, this is Shauna from the Foil Fox, and I'm here on the Paper Tray Ink YouTube channel, and it's a brand new release that's just come out, and I am introducing one of the wonderful die sets called Into the Blooms Dahlia. It has great foliage and these wonderful flowers, and then I'm going to use also Sprigs and Sprays Holiday that came out in the previous release, and you probably know it has also some great foliage, just looks a little bit different, and then it has a matching die set. And then the papers that I'm going to be using for this project are a A2 piece of hot press watercolor paper. Here I have some cold press watercolor paper just for the texture, and some heavy white cardstock. This is 110 pound. So I'm going to start out with that A2 hot press watercolor paper, and I'm lining it up on my work surface there, and so that I can use this frog tape. You can get this at the hardware store, or you can use purple tape, anything that's for delicate surfaces that where it will peel off very nicely and not rip your paper to shreds. And this works very nicely, and I'm just lining up so I have a 1/2 inch border all the way around, and I'm using the grid on my work surface to help me do that. And this makes very quick work of this kind of thing. I'm going to do a background now, really burnished, especially the corners. I'm going to be using a lot of water. Sometimes it leaks through a little bit, and so really try to burnish it down. But if it does leak through, no problem, we'll deal with that. And I'm using 3 inks. These are all paper tray inks that I'm using. And I'm using Pure Poppy, Scarlet Jewel, and True Black, and I'm just moistening my paper with some water so that I can get this ink moving. And I want the left side, and especially left to the bottom, to be quite intense with a dark red, and then in the upper right to be quite light. This is going to give me some interest for my background, and you'll see what I mean as we go along. So I'm just adding a lot of ink here, and I'll just keep adding more and more of the red ink, and I am using the combination of the Scarlet Jewel and the Pure Poppy and a touch of black so that I can darken it a little bit more, especially towards the bottom. You can see I just add more and more, because you know that when you use our watercoloring, when it dries back, gets completely dry, it's going to be lighter. So I want a really intense red on that left side, and you can see here adding that black really does intensify it down there in that corner. And I splatter every so often. I just, it looks kind of like a hot mess. I know that. And, but it will get better, and you'll see what I mean. So now I'm going to dry this because, as usual, I'm in a hurry. You can let it dry naturally, but I'm going to just dry it really quickly so that we can move on to our next step. And you can see it doesn't look like much right now, but you'll see that it won't matter. Now I'm going to just make sure I blot that off and wipe that down to make sure I don't have any extra water. And I'm going to peel this off, and here's the big reveal. These wonderful 1/2 inch border. That's what this tape allows. Now it worked pretty well. There are a couple of places down at the bottom where it just very slightly bled through. So what I did is I just trimmed it all the way back to just that, and I'm going to mount it onto a white card base. That's the way to solve that if it does bleed a little bit and you want to be really careful about it. I'm using some liquid glue right on the edges of this instead of my usual double stick tape, because I want this to stick really well down to the paper and not have any of the edges kind of peeling up a little bit. But now with my double stick tape, I am just adding this onto a white card base. This is an A2 card base. So my background is all done. Setting that aside, we're going to move on to our flowers and foliage. So I'm cutting the foliage out of the cold press watercolor paper, and out of the 110 pound, I'm cutting flowers. I'm going to cut a group of like 2 or 3 flowers, and I'm cutting out 2 each of these kind of fern like foliage. Love this foliage. It's really quite beautiful, and it has some wonderful detail and veining on the inside. Now I'm moistening it with water. Now keep in mind I did cut 2 pairs, so 2 of each of these, but I'm just showing you this one. And I'm really shortcutting here because it is so wet, I can just take the ink cube right to it. I was using pine feather there, and then a little bit of ripe avocado. I don't like them all to be the same, the whole same color all the way through. That's why I watercolor them. So I'm using spring moss, a little bit of new leaf, and then I am going to add a little bit of the pine feather as well, just for a little darkening. But I want these to be different in color. I want to have some contrast. And I'm just borrowing a little bit of that pine feather that I use that's still on my work surface. But because, it will grab if you try to put this ink cube directly to these without them being very, very wet. So keep that in mind. Be sure you get those pieces wet before you take an ink cube directly to it. I'm going to let those dry, and I'm now taking pure poppy and very lightly going around the edges of my flowers. You can see there's 3 pieces to this flower. You don't have to use all 3 of them, but it does make a really full flower if you do. And I'm using a little bit of metallic gold. This is Delicata Golden Glitz. And you can go to foilfox.com, and we have a complete supply list there, and also all of these products. And of course, Paper Tray Ink has the dies and stamp sets that I'm using. So I'm just putting my flower together, and see how you can kind of fluff up these petals. And even when they're laying really flat, like they would go in an envelope, they're still very pretty, but easy to fluff up. Now, I had some pieces left over from Sprigs and Sprays the last time I used it, which was one of my last videos, you may remember. And so I drug those out. I wanted to take a look and see if I might use some of them. So I'm back being florist, rearranging this. And I think I love this piece from Sprigs and Sprays Holiday, that one with the berries. As you probably know, I love berries. And I like just that hint of red. It just kind of pulls it all together. But right now I'm kind of arranging. I don't think I'm going to use these pine cones, but I tried to see what I thought about that. There is a new stamp set called Just Sentiment Santa. Cute expressions here, the sentiments. There's one of them, Merry Christmas to You, that I'm going to use. So I've put my card base into a stamp positioner. I have a piece of acetate over the top, so I can stamp this lightly, my sentiment lightly, to make sure that it looks like it's in the right position. Stamping it right on that piece of acetate, and then I've removed that piece of acetate, and I'm stamping it again. I'm using pure poppy there. I'm not introducing new inks. You could use white, of course, or black, but I wanted kind of a tone on tone. I usually like to keep my sentiments quite demure. So now I'm just trimming off these little stems to our foliage, rearranging these again, and I'm going to make kind of a crescent with the foliage, and then my flowers in there. And then once I think that I have it the way that I want it, after I've trimmed off these stems, because I don't want them sticking out the other way, and I'm just going to use this one, and I'm not going to use the other pieces. So just a couple that I'm borrowing from Sprigs and Sprays Holiday. And now that I've pretty much got it the way I think I want it, I've got to have to take it all apart and glue it down, so I'm not getting real precise. But let's take all these pieces away, and now I'll glue these down. I don't glue it all the way down, just the the bottoms of them, so to speak. I don't, so you can see just those ends. I want to keep these kind of not stuck all the way down. I want them to have a little bit of life and dimension to them. So I just put glue down at the base, and I have some foam tape on the back of my flowers, so that's what's going to stick these guys down. So I'm going to peel off that release tape and just stick these down. And you know, this is almost done. That's the beauty of this. This card actually came together very quickly, and it gives high impact, and it's a lovely Christmas card. Now I'm going to just do one more thing. I'm taking out my trusty Dr. P.H. Martin Bleed Proof White ink. You can use any ink or anything that you'd like, or you can use Nouveau drops or something. But I like this white because it's very white, gives a little bit of dimension. Now you see I have a paintbrush, but I'm using the opposite end, the handle end, because it's kind of round, and I didn't want to splatter this. I wanted to be more deliberate with my dots, and so I am just using the back of my paintbrush to add these in, and you can see them all here. By the way, choose a paintbrush that's kind of small so you don't get real big dots, and so you can see it all together. I really think it looks very festive. I love the colors. The background just makes everything pop. I am in love. This is a great, the Into the Blooms Dahlia is a great die set to have all year round. That's one of the things that makes it so terrific. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please give us a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, please subscribe. And here are a few things just in review. I use Into the Blooms Dahlia die set, Sprigs and Sprays Holiday Stamp and die set, these Just Sentiments Santa, that's brand new, and some various paper tray ink. And you can check out everything at blog.papertrayink.com or go to foiledfox.com, and we have a complete supply list and everything there as well. Thank you so much, and we will see you next time.